KTN Prime.
This case, as it runs, should be terminated because we believe in it. The prosecution has failed miserably in its responsibility.
Suspend the cases. Ruto speaks in support of the AU resolution. Which way for Sang? Journalist's fate remains unclear. Impeaching the governor. Makueni County Assembly plots against Kivutha Kibwana. And thousands of Muslims mark the end of the Mecca pilgrimage.
This is KTN Prime with Lindah Oguttu and Kitili.
Tuesday evening from the Standard Group Center here in Nairobi, and Eid Mubarak to our Muslim sisters and brothers, and many thanks for joining us on KTN Prime.
Indeed, many thanks for joining us on this bulletin. Of course, as usual, we will be hosting this bulletin with William Sila, our sign language interpreter, at the bottom end of your screen.
Deputy President William Ruto says he will continue to attend trial at the ICC until the UN Security Council responds to the deferral request by the African Union.
Addressing a news conference at The Hague, the Deputy President says he and President Kenyatta would prefer a legitimate process to clear their names.
KTN's Edith Kimani reports Ruto has asked the ICC to strike a balance between the trial and their obligations as Kenya's top leaderships.
For 4 weeks, Deputy President William Ruto has remained silent on his ongoing case at the International Criminal Court, even as the region called for a special sitting to steer his fate. But this afternoon, the Deputy President had something to say.
It is our preference to follow the route that has already been agreed to by the court, that there should be excusal of continuous attendance so that we can balance the scales of our requirement to comply and to work in the interest of justice and accountability.
But while attending some sessions would be ideal for the Deputy President, the reality is the appeals chamber could rule either way on the matter. Should the court rule unfavorably, deferring the case by a year is another card Kenya could play to end the current dilemma.
There are legitimate reasons for the deferral of this case to give Kenya the best possible chance to handle the serious challenges that exist in our region, in our country, on a matter that is of global concern of terrorism in our region.
An opinion that the West is seemingly warming up to. However, as government continues to weigh the available options, there is the less spoken of preference to end the case altogether.
This case, as it runs, should be terminated because we believe in it. The prosecution has failed miserably in its responsibility.
But even as these debates continue, Trial Chamber 5A has remained blind to external issues as the court continued to hear testimony from the third prosecution witness, who has said that tribal zoning was evident as early as 2006. Edith Kimani, KTN Prime.
Meanwhile, the African Union is pushing its resolution to insulate Kenya's top leadership from prosecution at the ICC, but in its motion lies many grey areas. What is the fate of Deputy President William Ruto's co-accused Joshua Arap Sang, given that their case is consolidated? KTN's Sam Ogina reports.
It was no surprise that the African Union confirmed wide speculations to resolve that President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto should not stand trial at the ICC.
Are we going to ignore the decision? How can we? How can we? We are part and parcel of the AU and have been since 1963.
But the AU deferral offensive of President Uhuru Kenyatta's trial for a period of 1 year has been described as tactful.
The art of governance or the art of African politics is double speak. So the president tells you he will cooperate, but quietly his shuttle diplomacy tells others he does not want to cooperate. So what AU was saying is exactly what the president has been saying quietly in diplomacy.
The heads of state in sanctioning Uhuru's skipping of trials argued incumbents should be shielded from active prosecution and their cases shelved until the end of their terms.
When Kenyans were told by Uhuru that ICC was personal, they chose to elect him. Therefore, they must collectively bear the burden of ICC. So you cannot say that ICC is not the Kenyans' burden. Unfortunately, that's how democracy works. He's your president, he's our president, and therefore, his problems are our problems.
But the 1 year deferral AU is seeking in President Uhuru Kenyatta's case does not cover the president's 5-year tenure. Begging the question, is Kenya playing poker on the ICC deferral bid?
They are in charge of the apparatus of the state. They will make the decision whether to cooperate or not to cooperate. They will also they are the ones holding the passes on witness protection fund. They can influence one way or the other. So the deferral of 1 day or 2 days, even 1 year, can strategically and tactfully be useful to their cause.
Well, it is checkmate for the ICC as the AU engages the court in a game of political and legal chess. The quest to equally halt the deputy president's case leaves his co-accused, Joshua Arap Sang's case, in a limbo.
The African Union, in a summit, cannot discuss a case that's before the court that does not touch on a sitting president or a senior state official.
But that statement puts the dynamics on deferral of Ruto's case into sharp perspective. How can a consolidated case of co-accused be collapsed?
Basically, they should be saying the cases in The Hague, as far as they are concerned, they are Kenyan cases and they should be treated the same way. However, the animal farm, George Orwell will tell you that not all animals are equal. And this is a case where African leaders are telling you that, yes, we have animals and some animals are more equal than others. And that's the tragedy here.
So if you are going to set free or defer Ruto's case, what will happen to Joshua Arap? Is he going to wait until the 20 years so that he can come home? No. If it is deferral, it should be uniform.
The fate of the deferral offensive now lies squarely with the United Nations Security Council, where the AU will present its case. Samugina, KTN.
Right, so there is a lot of push to have the case against President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto deferred. There has been a lot of discussion as well on the fate of Joshua Arap Sang, that is Ruto's co-accused. And actually, a journalist posed that question to Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, and she gave an answer saying that the case against Sang is actually a personal case on Sang. That forms the basis of our big question tonight, and we're asking, should Joshua Sang's case also be deferred?
Indeed, that is our question. Tell us what you think. SMS your yes or no response, plus a brief comment to the number 22155. You can also tweet us at Ben_Kitili, at Lindah Oguttu, and at KTN Kenya. We shall be sampling some of your views during this live newscast.
Right, let's move on with this bulletin. Makueni County Governor Kivutha Kibwana has denied reports that he will resign from office. Kibwana says he will continue to serve the residents of Makueni. This as members of the Makueni County Assembly plot to impeach him over the county's controversial budget.
Leaders from Makueni County Assembly remained holed up in a meeting for the better part of the day. The entire country was abuzz with reports that at any moment, Governor Kivutha Kibwana would step down from office. And when the members of the County Assembly emerged from the meeting, the story took a new twist.
Today we have moved the notice of the motion of impeaching the Makueni County Governor, Kivutha Kibwana, who has failed to deliver his duties as mandated by the constitution of this country. You can see the 2 toilets costing 4 million. That is misusement of funds. And by the time he's misusing the funds, people of Makueni, in most cases the part of Kibwezi and Mavindini, Kitili, Ekanga, they are dying due of hunger and also water.
That reaction followed this Facebook post by Governor Kibwana shared Monday evening. His post read in part, I have realized I cannot effectively respond to what I perceive to County Assembly insensitivity to the people's development agenda. I will tomorrow offer a letter of resignation as Governor of Makueni County Government. Kibwana was to later deny any link to this post, adding that he had no intention of resigning. The leadership crisis in Makueni County, however, dates back further than last evening's Facebook post. These were scenes from a debate at the County Assembly earlier in the month. Enraged members of the public had to be restrained by security officers following a dispute over the county budget. The County Assembly members had allocated 945 million shillings towards their personal operations, which Kivutha vehemently opposed.
Then as residents, we shall mobilize people from all the 30 wards that are in Makueni County to collect signatures that we shall, together with the governor, petition the president to suspend the County Assembly entirely.
While Kivutha's alleged intention to resign has placed a microscope on Makueni County, it has also reignited debate on the challenges rocking devolution in all 47 counties. There are reports Kivutha is not the only governor under siege from the members of the county assemblies.
But a number of counties are having difficulties in passing the budget, especially in managing the allocations to some assemblies.
However, if he indeed does resign, Kivutha Kibwana will become the first governor to do so. According to the Constitution, his deputy Adelaide Mwau would automatically assume office as the new governor of Makueni. Asha Mwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Focus on Makueni County once again. Elsewhere, embattled Registrar of the Judiciary Gladys Sholay will tomorrow appear before the Judicial Service Commission to respond to claims of impropriety against her. And as KTN's Wilson Buru reports, the JSC has denied a request by Sholay to hold the hearing in public.
After the expiry of the notice given to Sholay to prepare her response to the raft of accusations raised by the JSC, she is now set to appear before the Commission and defend herself in a bid to clear her name. In a 71-page document, Sholay responds to each of the 25 allegations that range from financial mismanagement to gross misconduct and insubordination. She presented the document to the JSC on the 1st of this month, and it is what will form the basis of Wednesday's deliberations. In the document, she denies any form of malpractice, saying there have been no irregularities, as alleged, adding that the judiciary's human resource and financial management systems are run in accordance with the Constitution. Among the issues that the JSC has accused her of is the leasing for premises to house courts without following due diligence. The Commission says no valuations were done on the available market rent rates, title deeds for the premises were not verified by the judiciary, and leases were not registered to safeguard the interests of the judiciary. Sholay says in her response that the Public Procurement and Disposal Act does not provide for valuations in cases of leasing. In the matter of title deeds, she insists that title deeds are issued where a party has purchased a property and not leased it. The JSC has also accused Sholay of failure to pay a salary advance equivalent to 8 months' salary, amounting to 3.5 million shillings. The Commission also says she drew the money from the Judiciary Fund instead of Consolidated Fund, which is her pay point. Again, Sholay denies this allegation. Though she admits to having applied and received 2 sets of salary advances amounting to 3.9 million shillings, she says she has paid most of the monies with only a balance of about 980,000 shillings. An application by Sholay to have the hearing held in public has been denied by the JSC. In her application, she had argued that it is only a public hearing that guarantees transparency. Wilson Buru, KTN Prime.
Let's see how that story pans out tomorrow. Of course, we'll keep an eye on it for you. Now, 1 person died and several were injured after 2 gangs clashed over the control of a dump site at Nairobi's Dandora estate. It took the intervention of the police to restore calm in that area.
The Dandora dump site, destination of tons of Nairobi's solid waste, garbage stretching into the horizon. Waste pickers pounds on trash that includes industrial, agricultural, domestic and medical waste. This waste has now become a battlefield. Mid-morning, two gangs engaged in a tussle over control of the dump site. Those residing near the dump site say sounds of gunshots and commotion were heard from the direction of the site.
Leo asubuhi wameanza uchokozi kukimbizana huku vijana wa huku wameanza kututupia na binduki na machupa.
Sasa hii vita ilikuwa imetokea hapa Korokocho. Ni vita ya vijana maskini. Sasa hao vijana hawana mtu wa kuangalia.
Stare OCPD Samuel Anempiu says police officers arrived at the scene, but they could not access the dump site. Police say the groups were armed with crude weapons.
Ili sasa tutafute ile mtu alihusika, kwa sababu makosa sio sisi, sio nyinyi nyote. Makosa ni mtu mmoja ama wawili wale walifanya, si ndio?
The dumping site is among the most notorious places in Nairobi, said to be highly insecure because it is controlled by gangs. The garbage collecting companies are said to pay a protection fee to these gangs. Police say the site is home and business site to the gang members, and today's violence is believed to have been a result of a tough war between two of these gangs. Angel Katuse, KTN.
Our big question tonight is on the ICC cases. Of course, there has been talk of the deferral case against President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. And on the big question tonight, we are asking, should Joshua Arap Sang's case also be deferred?
Let us know what you think. You can tweet us at KTN Kenya, at Lindah Oguttu, and of course at Ben Kitili. We would like to sample your opinion during this bulletin. Let me see if I can sample some of what you're saying. Kinder Wilson says, of course, it should be. He's also as Kenyan as the president and his deputy.
Tella Abala on Twitter says, if AU is really protecting their people from the ICC trials, then Sang should also be assisted. Keep telling us what you think. Keep tweeting us, of course, and sending those texts to the number is 22155. Now, take a short break. Don't go too far. Much coming up shortly.
Stay with us.
The industrial process of brewing alcohol, on how things work.
You're watching KTN Prime.
You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Now, elsewhere, journalist Walter Barasa will not be handed over to the International Criminal Court. High Court Judge Richard Munga has also ruled that Barasa will continue to receive 24-hour security provided by the state. Barasa is wanted by the ICC on claims that he interfered with witnesses of the ongoing case against Deputy President William Ruto and Joshua Arap Sang. Barasa's case continues on Friday.
Right, let's now look at how things work. This is an interesting one. We have received numerous requests to feature the process of brewing beer. And tonight, Betty Callow is heeding that call. She now brings you how things work inside the brewery. Take a look.
A long time ago, way back in history, when all there was to drink was nothing but cups of tea, along came a man by the name Charlie Mops, and he invented a popular drink, and he made it out of hops. 7,000 years ago, the first beer was brewed. Centuries later, more people continue to enjoy this drink. Ever wonder how beer is made? Tonight, we'll tell you how on How Things Work. This is the Keroche Breweries. Here, up to 60,000 bottles of beer leave the plant daily. But before you get your beer, there is an intricate process that takes place behind the scenes. At the factory, huge tanks, pipes, and complex laboratory procedures to crown it all. So how do they all come together to brew beer? Let's get to it. There are 4 main ingredients in beer: malted barley, yeast as you know it, water, and a plant known as hops. So important is this last ingredient, it is said to be the spice of beer. Yup, beer too needs some extra zing.
The raw materials we receive, then it is carefully analyzed by our experts in the lab to confirm that they have the right quality.
There are 6 steps in processing beer: mashing, lautering, boiling, cooling, fermentation, and carbonation. The process begins here. This is the storage facility specifically for malted barley. When the plant is ready to begin processing, the barley is fed into this machine and taken to the miller machine. This is the miller. It is here that the malted barley is crushed to break up the kernel and obtain a powderish substance known as grist or flour. After the grist has been acquired, the first step of beer making, known as mashing, begins.
Now that we have got our flour, what happens here is just to mix with water to get that extract, to get that solution we are interested in. This is where now we mix the flour with the water and then we dissolve it.
Mashing takes about an hour in order to release the sugars contained in the grains. The sugars are important because sugars are the food that yeast later eats during fermentation to produce alcohol. Mashing also helps add aroma and flavor to the beer. After mashing, lautering is the next step. This is where the liquid obtained during the mashing process is separated from the husks of the spent grains to obtain a filtered liquid known as wort.
There are sieves inside, as you've seen. Those sieves are made to allow the liquid phase, and then they restrain the solid particles from boiling. So now after that you get your liquid phase to the boiling, and then your solid particles, they are used as animal feeds.
The wort is then sent to another tank for the final brewing step. In this tank, the liquid is boiled for 1 hour to kill microorganisms. It is also here that the hops, remember those spices, are added to the liquid. Hops are the plants that essentially give beer the bitter taste. After the boiling, this is the liquid that is obtained. However, it's not yet ready to be packed.
This is now what you are taking to the fermenters.
After, the water is cooled so the yeast can be added. This is the last step in the typical brew day.
The clear solution now moves to the fermentation tanks. On the way, it is added the yeast, the calculated quantity of the yeast.
Next up is fermentation, which is largely a waiting period. These are the tanks in which fermentation takes place. Each tank holds up to 30,000 liters of beer, which translates to 60,000 bottles.
The fermentation process starts for the next 21 days. The 21 days will have different fermentation profiles. That is, the temperature will vary.
After 21 days of fermentation, that's right, nearly a month of fermentation, the beer is now ready. The experts in the plant then have to test through physical testing of the beer to ensure its quality. When approved, the beer is passed through a carbonation plant and then sent to storage tanks awaiting packing. At the bottling area, activity. Never a dull moment. The bottles are cleaned fast, inspected, and lined up to be filled with beer even faster. The bottles are filled, the crates are packed, ready to be delivered to the market. And that is what happens behind the scenes to process that beer that you love. Betty Kialo, how things work.
Well, there you have it. Cheers, Betty, for that. Now, police in Nairobi are looking for a man suspected to have drugged 2 guards from the 9/11 security group. The guards are said to have eaten drug-laced cookies offered by the man. It is alleged that the man had parked his car at the Transnational building here in Nairobi, where the guards work, before sharing the biscuits with them. The guards say they immediately felt dizzy and were taken to Nairobi West Hospital for treatment. The management of the Transnational Plaza has confiscated the vehicle believed to belong to the suspect.
We highly suspect that these biscuits were laced with drugs. Now, from there, our security officer tried reaching him. Yeah, he promised to come. He didn't come, but later on in the night, around 9-10 p.m., yeah, he came back wanting his car to be released. But the security or personnel declined to release the car.
You're watching KTN Prime, and in other news making headlines, 2 girls who had been kidnapped for 11 days were rescued last night at a house in Ngong. The kidnappers had demanded a ransom of 82 million shillings. And in Bungoma, one of the key witnesses in the nullified Bungoma senatorial petition has alleged that his life is in danger. Ian Wafula has the details.
First Lady Margaret Kenyatta has pledged to support initiatives in aid of orphans and abandoned children. The First Lady visited Imani Children's Home in Kayole, Soweto. The home is one of the 700 children's rehabilitation institutions in the country, hosting more than 40,000 vulnerable children. And in Ngong, 9 people were last night arrested for allegedly kidnapping 2 children. The group is said to have rented the house 2 months ago. They are alleged to have demanded a ransom of 82 million shillings from the parents of the girls, who are twins, but later reduced the amount to 21 million shillings. The girls had been missing for 11 days. Elsewhere, children in Maseno marked the Global Hand Washing Day aimed at preventing diseases such as diarrhea. According to the latest Kenya County Health Fact Sheet, out of 1,000 live births, there are 146 deaths of children under 5 years old in Nyanza province. And tension between villagers living on the border of Kisumu and Nandi counties boiled over yesterday as a tussle over land resulted in the death of a businessman. The controversial land is associated with a retired judge. Finally, a key witness in the just concluded Bungoma senatorial petition is claiming that his life is in danger after unknown attackers torched his home last night. George Sitati was one of the witnesses of former cabinet minister Muskari Kombo. He says 3 armed men broke into his Chebukaka home in Kabushai constituency.
Petroli inamwagwa kupitia kwa dirisha la nyumba yangu, na hilo dirisha halina window panes. Ilimwagwa kwa sababu tulisikia hiyo harufu, nikajua hiyo ni petrol. Within no time moto ulikuwa umelipuka. Wakati moto ulilipuka, mimi na huyu rafiki yangu tukatoka mbio mbio nje. Kufika pale nje tukaona vijana 3 wanatimua mbio wakipanda upande wa juu.
This incident comes 1 month after Kombo's lawyers in the case, Peter Wanyama Wanyonyi, was killed under unclear circumstances. Ian Wafula, KTN.
You're watching KTN Prime. Many thanks for staying with us. On the big question tonight, we're asking you, should Joshua Arap Sang's case also be deferred? There are a lot of yeses. Let me read a rare no here from Michael Nginyo. Says that's not in Sang's best interest. For Uhuru, 6 million plus Kenyans changed the game.
Jonah seems to disagree. Says yes, we don't want to have a farm where some animals are more equal than the others. Keep tweeting us. We'll sample some of your opinions. Just before we end this bulletin, you're watching KTN Prime. Thank you for staying with us. We're taking a short break now to pave way for business news, which will be brought to you by Boni Tunya in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
Hello and good evening. This is KTN Business. My name is Boni Tunya. Bobisa area of Marsabit County boasts of having the strongest winds that can be converted to between 400 to 600 megawatts of energy if well managed. Now, this could contribute significantly to Kenya's quest for reliable, cleaner and cheaper energy source. Carol Nderi visited the area and brings us this story.
For first-timers in this county, the wind could be disturbing, but for residents, they are accustomed to this necessary evil already. But should the wind flow project succeed, the residents of Marsabit will be beneficiaries of a cleaner, efficient and cheap source of energy. These masts along the Marsabit-Moyale Road have been here for 3 years now, and probably only the residents of the sleepy Bobisa area have a clue on their use. Measuring the intensity of the wind flow here and in Loyangalani area.
The Bobisa wind corridor, all day from Abaswen down to Bobisa, down to Loyangalani, is being rated as where we have the strongest wind in the world.
With such a potential, the county government knows only too well how they will unlock these potentials. This was also part of the issues on the table during the recent investment forum hosted by Governor Ukur Yatani.
Weza wekwa kituo cha kutengeneza nishati cha hadi megawatt 400-600. Kuna pia kituo chengine Loyangalani ambacho kimepata mfadhili na kina uwezo wa kutengeneza nishati ya upepo hadi megawatt 300.
Iko na nafasi ya kupeana umeme si Kenya pekee, hata East Africa mzima.
The residents of Bobisa are optimistic of the winds of change blowing in their favor. As you can see, Marsabit County is very windy, and if they're able to tap into the wind power to generate energy, what this means is that we'll have various sources of energy and the technology field will expand.
Community venye wanahitaji ni share fulani. Wakipata share zao, unajua huku hakuna shamba kwingine.
So these are opportunities, a gold mine, we are sitting on it, and I'm happy quite a number of organizations and companies have shown interest to develop production of energy, wind energy from here.
Over the years, Kenya has heavily relied on hydro-generated power, and it plans to incorporate alternative sources of cleaner energy like wind power that will offer relief as well as check on the dangers of global warming. Carol Nderi for KTN in Bobisa, Marsabit County.
The Kenya Association of Women Business Owners has unveiled its advocacy campaign aimed at creating awareness on the new public procurement and proposal regulations of 2011. Now, this law reserves 30% of all government contracts to women, youth and persons living with disabilities. Dubbed the Imarisha Biashara, the campaign seeks to mobilize women in business to register their businesses with the National Treasury to the county treasuries and build capacity in anticipation of bidding for 30% of all government tenders worth an estimated 300 billion shillings this financial year. The association, in partnership with the Public Procurement Oversight Authority, will carry out countrywide training to ensure women in business understand what the law entails and how to take advantage of it. So far, some 216 women have already received the training required to prepare and submit their competitive bids.
As part of the Jubilee government promises, the economic well-being of women, youth and the disabled sits at the core. This has seen the government set aside 30% of all state procurements to this category of persons. The size of this pie is estimated at 300 billion shillings. But even before it starts trickling down, the Kenya Association of Women Business Owners is raising alarm on new clauses introduced by the National Treasury.
The Treasury has decided to limit this opportunity to businesses that have less than 10 million in annual turnover a year.
The association is also taking issue with some government agencies limiting the 30% stake to small tenders, which they say is equal to discrimination.
It would be totally wrong to have any restrictions around these 30%.
They are now demanding that the state repeals the rules to allow competition in the procurement process, something that would improve the standards of goods and services provided.
You cannot disenfranchise a constituency called women. They must become actively engaged in society, in their national economies.
The association is currently undertaking a countrywide campaign dubbed the Imarisha Biashara to mobilize women in business to register with the National Treasury or the county and take advantage of doing business with the state. For years, women, youth and people living with disabilities were deliberately kept on the fringes of the public procurement system. As such, the decision to set aside 30% of all government tenders worth an estimated 300 billion shillings to them could be the key to revolutionizing the archaic system and also boosting the country's SME sector. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Right, for the interest of women. And moving on, while the government remains optimistic of hitting the 6% economic growth this year, analysts believe anything above 5.25% will be a stretch too far. However, as Michael Karanja reports, devolved funds could hold a key to accelerated economic growth.
The second quarter growth for this year slowed down to 4.3%, down from 5.2% in Q1. While the tourism sector was the hardest hit, other sectors remained resilient. This brings the performance in the first half of the year to 4.7%, slower than the corresponding period in 2012. Analysts at Old Mutual, however, see resurgence in the second half of the year based on a pickup in private credit growth as the central bank maintains its monetary stance.
You could look around and say what sort of risks are there, and I don't think the risks are really domestic. Maybe they could be external.
The Nairobi Securities Exchange 20-share index has grown by 38% in the year, buoyed by foreign inflows, something analysts expect to continue throughout the year. While inflation surged to 8.2% in September, Old Mutual believes the core inflation, which is dictated by huge demand, has remained stable enough not to affect growth.
The impacts that we've seen on inflation right now are temporary. Obviously, the VAT impact, prices go up one step, thereafter they hold.
But it is perhaps the optimism that county governments will utilize devolved funds well to spur economic growth that stands out. According to the Old Mutual outlook, county funds, if used wisely, have the potential to spur business and consumption growth. Ultimately, growth will depend on macroeconomic stability as the country comes under increased pressure from a slowing global economy and acts of terror that may dampen investor appetite if they continue unabated. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
Right, and moving on, Kenya Commercial Bank has gone into the way of innovation as well as complaints over the lack of a ministry for cooperative developments. All that coming up in the business wrap up next.
Group has launched M-Banki, a technology-driven innovation targeting at the unbanked population who own mobile phones. The platform allows individuals to open a bank account through the KCB Mobi Bank platform. This will also allow customers to easily access services anywhere from across the world, whether they have a KCB account or not. Elsewhere, a parliamentary consultative forum convened by the Kenya Union of Savings and Credit Cooperative Societies has faulted the new constitution for the scrapping of the Ministry of Cooperative Development, arguing that having a department dedicated to SACCOs was not sufficient. The forum, however, also challenged savings and credit cooperatives to conform their operations in line with the current constitution in order to ensure success in devolution.
Right, it is time to look at how your money is working for you. So let's go to the numbers on the Financial Market Review coming up next. Right, that's all we had in business. I will see you tomorrow. Back to Ben and Lindah.
Bonitunya, thank you for that. Let's now take you all the way to the coast. And uncertainty marked the beginning of celebrations of Eid al-Adha as a section of Muslims observed their prayers.
And as Ferdinand Omondi reports, the Chief Qadi now wants the authority to declare such celebrations vested in his office alone and entrenched in the Constitution.
Masjid Kulthum was one of the venues in Mombasa where a section of Muslims observed Eid al-Adha. In Nairobi, hundreds more converged at the Sir Ali grounds as thousands of faithful countrywide marked the festival of sacrifice a day earlier than the Chief Qadi announced it would be.
Ukiwa nasema leo ni Jumanne mpaka saa 6 usiku ni Jumanne. Alafu saa 6 usiku baada saa 6 ni Jumatano inaanza. Usiku moja inakuwa na siku mbili. Ina Jumanne na Jumatano. Kiislamu sivyo.
ni consensus ya ulama. Ulama walikubaliana ya kwamba sisi hatuna budi hapa ila kufuata kitu gani inaendelea katika Makkah na Medina.
This is the umpteenth time that a section of the Muslim faithful has disregarded the announcement made by the Chief Qadi and gone ahead to mark a feast with the sighting of the new moon as spotted in Saudi Arabia.
Kwani kuna Arafa ya Kenya? Kama hakuna Arafa ya Kenya, wewe uko na haki gani ya kusema ya kwamba leo ndio Arafa na Waislamu tayari wametoka Arafa jana?
Already, the Chief Qadi has expressed concerns that this confusion may be construed as disobedience or disunity among the faithful.
There are legal arguments, they are good, but the other way around, I mean, it is bad, because people, they think that, I mean, Muslims are divided.
These differences also came to the fore during the Eid al-Fitr celebrations earlier this year and have occurred almost yearly. A frustrated Chief Qadi now wants sole authority to declare such celebrations vested in his office alone, and he wants that authority to be entrenched in Kenya's constitution.
Otherwise, if, I mean, it is not enacted anywhere in laws, then we will remain like this, I mean, forever.
Eid al-Adha is the second most important festival in the Muslim calendar. Muslims honor the willingness of the Prophet Ibrahim to sacrifice his young firstborn son Ismail as an act of submission to Allah's command and his son's acceptance to being sacrificed. Ferdinand Mundi, KTN, Mombasa.
You're watching KTN Prime. Let's recap our top story tonight. Deputy President William Ruto says he will continue to attend trial at the ICC until the UN Security Council responds to the deferral request by the African Union.
Addressing a news conference at The Hague, the Deputy President said he and President Kenyatta would prefer a legitimate process to clear their names.
Ruto asked the ICC to strike a balance between the trial and their obligations as Kenya's top leadership.
When all the courts continued to hear the testimony of the prosecution third witness, that is 487, who said tribal zoning was evident as early as year 2006. And of course, that story is related to our big question tonight. And we're asking you, should Joshua Arapsang's case also be deferred? Some comments?
Yes, indeed. We have lots of comments. I'll read a very interesting one from Collins Wambua. He says, yes, of course. Isn't he Kenyan? It's time the president and his deputy show how much they care about their citizens by not leaving Sang there.
Interesting one. Another interesting one here from Jen Kaigwara says, no, he does not hold a constitutional office. Uhuru and Ruto will go once out of office.
Keep tweeting us. We'll sample your views just before we end this bulletin. And this bulletin all the way in Machakos. And the entertainment industry in Kenya is set to grow if the vision of Machakos County is anything to go by.
If you're familiar with Hollywood in America, Nollywood in Nigeria, now brace yourself for Machawood.
The Machakos County government has set aside 50 acres of land for the Machawood Center.
The center has been allocated 60 million shillings for its startup operations.
Filmmakers come to when they come to the continent of Africa. We want to have music studios so that people record their music here. Music videos are made here. Art is supported here. We want to grow the entertainment industry because we know it's a very, very big industry, so that we can have income being generated right here in Machakos.
The biggest resource one can have, any country can have, is the resource of his people. And I think this is one region that is blessed and gifted with the talents from young people. So we're excited about this new challenge, and we're looking forward to do bigger things here.
I'll give it my all to make sure that Machawood becomes the place of choice for any filmmaker, any entertainment person, any musician that wants to come around, and we shall make a lot of noise about this Machawood and make sure that we are top, not only in Kenya, but in the world.
It's a good initiative.
Yes, that's
Though
very
Machawood is a mouthful.
Let's see how that plays out. Right, so do you think the case against journalist Joshua Arapsang should be deferred? That was the big question tonight. Let's look at the poll numbers. Ben?
This is how we polled. 31% of you say no and 69% seem to agree with our big question tonight.
Right, so Alphonse says Ruto and Sang's case are interconnected. None can proceed without the other. Both should be deferred.
Onyari says, yes, Sang's case should also be deferred because they are accused jointly of the same point there. One last one here. Wamui says, in the animal farm, not all animals were treated equally. His fate is unpredictable.
Those are your opinions. Thank you for writing in, for being part of KTN Prime. We'll see you tomorrow. Sleep well. I'm Lindah Oguttu.
Many thanks for your company tonight. Good night from the Standard Group Center.